And the word instructed is a word that indicates he has learned something thoroughly. He has learned something intimate. It's not as if he has a brushing acquaintance with this. I have learned this intimately in my own soul. How did he learn this? How did he learn contentment? In whatever state he was in. Well, the apostle doesn't say exactly, but we know that God had been teaching the apostle Paul for a long time. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11, Paul talks about his life as a minister, as an apostle. 2 Corinthians 11:23, he wants to show them that he was a true apostle and that his life indicated that by the sufferings that he endured. And so he says, are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. He doesn't want to boast here, but he says, all right, if they say that they're ministers, let me show you a little bit of what it really means to be a minister of the gospel, an apostle of Jesus Christ. He says, I am more than that. In labors more abundant, in stripes, children, that means whips laid upon his back, stripes on his back that opened up wounds, in stripes above measure, in prisons more frequent, in deaths oft, that is, nigh unto death. Of the Jews, 5 times received I 40 stripes save one, 39 lashes of the whip. 5 different times from the Jews. Thrice was I beaten with rods. That's the way the Roman authorities would beat him. They'd take a rod out and beat a man. 3 different times he had that. Once I was stoned. 3 times I suffered shipwreck. A night and a day have I been in the deep, floating in the Mediterranean Sea, a day and a night. In journeys more often, in perils of waters, in perils of robbers, in perils by mine own countrymen. My own countrymen attacked me. In perils by the heathen, they attacked me. In perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren in the church that attacked me. In weariness and painfulness, in watchings often, in hunger, in thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness. I have learned. God, through these things, taught the Apostle Paul. And so, God teaches us. We whose hearts are so naturally set on earthly things, who find our joy and delight in the things of this world, we who so often think that the only way that I can be happy is if I get my way. If I get my way, then I'll be happy. We're like little children, not happy until it's my way. We have to learn that's not true. I have learned through affliction, through trouble, through sorrows. Even Solomon had to learn that. You can work through the book of Ecclesiastes and he sees all this is vanity. All the things that I have, even all the earthly knowledge that I have, it's all vanity of vanities. Only this, he comes to the conclusion, fear God and keep His commandments. That's what God requires of us. There's joy. So we begin to learn. We learn it as little children. Little children who want their own way, and yet they have to learn that their way isn't the best way. Parents have to teach. Parents have to show them this is not the right way. You will do it this way because that's the way the Word of God requires of you. And the children begin to learn that the way of obedience to God, which is the way of obedience to parents, is the way of true joy. Not my way, not that I can go and do whatever I please, but that I obey my parents and obey God That's the way of joy and contentment. God is beginning to shape us, even in a covenant home, as children are instructed. You see the dreadfulness then of letting a child go his own way. He's not learning to submit to the Lord. Dreadful is a parent's instruction that does not require a child to bend his will to the will of the parent, according to the will of God. God-fearing wives learn this. Our marriage form has a very beautiful line in it when it says to the wife, "And your will shall be subject to your husbands." Your will is subject to your husbands. In other words, if this is what he wants, then you must bend your will to be in conformity with his. And the wives are learning that ultimately to do that to God. I think that's probably why there are in the Church of Jesus Christ always so many God-fearing women, because they have learned to bend their will to their husband's will, and therefore they've been trained by God to bend their will to God's will, whereas the men think, "I want it my way." But God won't allow that. The aged saint is still learning contentment as God takes away from him all the things that formerly were so important to him, all the things that he used to love to do, the material possessions that were so important to him when he was young. And he sits in a home, maybe an old people's home, and we might say, how can he be content there? And the answer is, he has learned to be content. He has learned that God's way is the best way, and that life is not of the material things. That's not what life consists of. Life is life with God. Absolutely, totally satisfying. And so we have to learn that. We all do. And we learn it again and again. And once we think we've learned it, yet we still have so much more to learn about submitting to God's will and not seeking the things of this world, so that we may lose all that we have, maybe in a fire, maybe to thieves. But you understand, our heavenly treasures are not touched by that. They're not taken away from us. We may be starving someday. We may be shivering in a prison cell, may have no hope of improvement. But you understand, our joy is in God. It's not in the earthly things. It's where we're going. It's not where we are now that's important. Widows learn that, and widowers. And people with diseases, crippling diseases, diseases that will bring them down finally to the grave. And all the sorrows and all the troubles of life, we learn God is our joy. He is our comfort. But we also learn this: God's way is the best way. Because God, by His will, is working out our salvation. Whatever He has determined for us, troubles or sorrows in this life, are for His glory. They're shaping us. They're molding us for our place in heaven. Everything works together for our good. We learn that. And when we know that, we can be content with the way that God gives us. The Apostle Paul says, I have learned to be abased. That word abased means to be humbled, the way a little child is humbled. I have learned that. When our pride is destroyed, when we are brought into a lowly position in life, even into prison, then we don't rebel at that. We don't complain, but we are content. I have learned to be abased. I have learned to abound. That means to excel, that you may be lifted up and people may honor you. The Apostle Paul is saying, it really doesn't matter to me. People can take me and put me in a prison cell. People can take me and praise me